What's up, concert addicts? Johnny Kinsvater here with episode 2 of the Concert Addiction podcast. I know it's been like 7 months or something like that since episode 1. So technically you could call this episode 1. I've been super busy over the summer working on a bunch of stuff. So hopefully from here until the end of the year, we can work on getting more into a schedule. That's my plan. Anyways, and then by the new year, it'll be a pretty consistent stream. We'll have podcasts every week, as long with videos every day, yada, yada, yada. But like I said, it's been a while since I've been on, so I figured I'd start now so that by the end of the year, hopefully I'll be able to do everything I want to do. So before we get into the topics I'm going to be talking about, which are listed in the description, and I've got a whole list of topics that we're going to be going over today. Because I haven't made a video in a while, I'm going to be going back a little bit further than a week, just talking about some of the main stories. But from here on out, it will be all the stories from the week before regarding live music. So any tour announcements, any festival announcements, any kind of funny shit that happens, I'm going to be talking about it. Today is Veterans Day, so I just want to say happy Veterans Day and thank you to all the veterans out there. And I want to start the podcast by talking about something that's not necessarily concert related, but something that I did want to mention. As a lot of you probably know, our country suffered yet another tragic mass shooting. This past one happened to take place at a bar. It wasn't actually during a concert, which is why this isn't an official topic on this show, because it's not super related. But the bar that this tragedy took place at was a country style honky tonk kind of bar. It's called the Borderline Bar and Grill. Pretty popular bar in Thousand Oaks in California. Sounds like California's version of the Grizzly Rose. Like I said, no concert actually happening the night of the shooting. I believe it was the bar's college country swing dancing night. But they do host shows there. Jared Neiman played there not too long ago, as well as Drake White and Adam Carolla did a show there not too long ago too. So pretty popular bar. And another shitty fucking thing that happened, because it just can't seem to stop happening in our country. I'm not going to get political because that's not what we do here. But definitely needs addressed, because this definitely can't keep happening. Best thoughts go out to everybody involved by this horrible event. 12 people lost, 13 including the shooter. And we just need to move forward, make sure that we can do something to prevent this shit from keep happening. All right, so I'll get on to the first official topic of the day, which is probably the most recent story that I'm going to be talking about, because this is something that happened last night. And most of these stories are going to be sprinkled from throughout the rest of the week. Joe Perry from Aerosmith, and you guys may have heard about this. It's been a lot of the news. I've been seeing a lot about it on Facebook today. But Joe Perry yesterday was in New York City. Billy Joel was playing at Madison Square Garden, which I don't know if you guys know or not, but Billy Joel, he likes to do that. He likes to play Madison Square Garden. He kind of retired from touring. He doesn't go out on the road a whole lot, but he usually plays a couple shows every year, including one at Madison Square Garden. About every year he does about one. And I believe he holds the record for the most sold out shows consecutively there. He's done it like 35 times. Well, he did it again yesterday, and Joe Perry was all over social media yesterday showing his access badges and revealing that he was going to be at that concert. Nobody really knew if he was just going to be there as a fan or if he was actually going to be performing with Billy Joel. Nonetheless, the show happened, and about halfway through, I believe it was, Billy Joel did call Joe Perry up. And they played some classic Aerosmith. They played Walk This Way. And there's some shitty cell phone video of it online if you want to see Billy Joel performing with Joe Perry. It was pretty kick-ass. It was pretty cool to see. But that's not the story. The story is what happened after the fact. I guess his performance went off, without any problems. It was a pretty fun little thing that they did at the concert. Then he went away. But apparently when he got backstage, he collapsed. And they ended up ambulancing him to the hospital. Again, if you guys aren't familiar with Joe Perry all that much, he kind of likes to do this, I guess. Just kidding. He doesn't like to do it, obviously. But Joe Perry does have a history of collapsing and then having to get get taken to the hospital. A couple years ago, it actually happened during a show. He was playing with his band, the Hollywood Vampires, with Johnny Depp and Alice Cooper, and he actually passed out on stage, and they ended up, doing a whole thing again. And that time, they said that was related to exhaustion and dehydration. I haven't heard what the possible diagnosis would be from what happened last night. I don't know what he's been diagnosed with. I did see an update not too long ago that he is conscious and awake and alert in the hospital. So that's good, because we don't need to lose any more legends, especially legends of his, stature. If we lost Joe Perry, man, that would suck, at least for a while. We need to keep him around here for a little bit. So my best thoughts go out to Joe Perry. Collapsed after performing with Billy Joel last night. Hopefully he just had too good of a time, and it was exhaustion again. He just overworked himself, and hopefully he could learn to stop doing that. Aerosmith's going out on the road at the end of the month, and so hopefully he could be back ready for that. I have a statement that was released by his people regarding what happened last night, so I'll just read that real quick. It says, following a guest performance during Billy Joel's show last night at Madison Square Garden, Joe Perry experienced shortness of breath and was treated backstage by paramedics who gave the guitarist oxygen and used a tracheal tube to clear his airway before taking him to the hospital. This morning, Perry remains in the hospital where he is alert and responsive. The Aerosmith guitarist will be unable to appear today and at Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp in Florida, and apologizes to those attending. Perry is expected to return to the road later this month. So everything should end up being okay for him. This is more than likely just a scare, but hopefully it opens up his eyes, because it seems like what happened in 2016 when he collapsed, I think that was just an eye-opener. And I think it's been so long that, he probably is just getting a little careless again. Those rock stars, they can't live the way that they're used to living, I guess. They've lived crazy lives for the past 50 years, and now they're old men, and they need to realize that they need to be more cautious. I'm not entirely sure, but nonetheless, we'll move on from that. The next story we're talking about is more like kind of a half a story, because there's not much to it yet, so I won't spend too much time on it, but hopefully next week's podcast, I can go more in depth on it, because I have a feeling that an announcement is coming tomorrow, though I have no confirmation on that, and that is just purely speculation. But the Rolling Stones are more than likely going to tour the U.S. pretty heavy next year, would be my guess. I predict that they're going to hit all these football stadiums, because they're kind of teasing that that's exactly what they're going to do. The Rolling Stones haven't played in North America since 2014, I believe, or 2015. So if they tour next year, it'll be 4 years. I think that's just right. And because they're arguably the biggest band in the world, they need the football stadiums. And they're already hinting at that, like I mentioned before. Over last weekend, a giant pair of lips, their logo, appeared on the side of Mile High Stadium down in Denver. And they actually haven't played in Denver in like 13 years. And last time they went through there, they actually played the Pepsi Center. They didn't even play the football stadium. But a giant flag hanging off the side of the stadium that's multiple stories tall appeared. So, yeah, they're definitely coming to Denver. It's not for sure yet, but there's like a 90% chance. There has been situations in the past where it's just fans doing things to try to mess with people, but I don't think that's what this is. There was also some Rolling Stones logos popping up in Massachusetts at the Patriots Stadium, and so they're probably going to be playing there too. And those are the only two hints that they've given so far, but there's quite a range between them. So I have a feeling that we're going to get a full countrywide tour, probably spring would be my guess, or summer, because they typically do those stadium tours over summer most of the time. But we'll wait and see. I would love to see the Rolling Stones. I hope that they come, and I hope that because they're actually touring, their prices go down, because I think they did a European tour last year, but for the most part in the United States over the past couple of years, they haven't been doing a lot of touring. They've mostly just been doing like residencies in Vegas or like one-off shows here and there. And the Vegas shows, I know for a fact, were $500 for a ticket starting. That's the bottom price level, is $500. If they do a tour, they obviously won't be able to get away with doing prices like that. And so hopefully they don't. I don't know. If any band could get away with doing that, they might. Garth Brooks is coming through, and his tickets are $95. I think that'd be about fair for the Rolling Stones. Not that they're really on the same level or comparable. I just think for a stadium show where the lowest level of seats, you're going to be like 20 miles away from the stage, just looking at a dot on the actual stage. I think that around $90 would be fair. But we'll wait and see. Like I said, they haven't played the U.S. in a while on a massive scale tour. Plus, I think they've said before that they'll never retire. Other times they've hinted about retiring. Who knows? But if they do decide to end, I think now would be a good time for them to do it because everybody's doing farewell tours nowadays. And theirs would actually be believable. When everybody does a farewell tour, like Kiss is getting ready to embark on theirs, and I'll talk about that a little while later on. But everybody's like, oh, we'll see, because a lot of these bands do farewell tours, and then they're back on the road. Within a couple of years. We've just this year we've had Slayer, Leonard Skinner, all these bands doing final tours, and everybody's like, yeah, that's not really a final tour. We'll wait and see. But if the Rolling Stones were to do it, I think that's an announcement that you could actually take as concrete because of how old they are and because they don't really have a whole lot else to gain. Obviously, they don't fall into the category of artists that make their money from touring because they don't do a whole lot of touring. So this is just cherries on top for them. And I hope if they do go out, then they go out massively. I kind of don't think they will, though. I won't be surprised if it's a farewell tour, but I don't think it will be. I think they're just going to tour, and I think they're probably just going to play until they die, which who knows when that'll be. Moving on, we had a whole bunch of actual announcements come out this week. And a little while before this week, like I said, I'm backtracking. So where the Rolling Stones put out a tease, there was a lot of actual official announcements from a lot of other bands and festivals. So I'm just going to do a rundown talking about them as well as a couple other little stories here and there that I picked up too. First one is the Tailgate N Tallboys Festival, which takes place in Peoria, Illinois every year, a couple times during the summer. Next year, it's going to be taking place June 13th through 16th, July 19th through the 20th, and September 14th. So like I said, it's a festival that they do, at least they did it last year. I think they do it every year. I'm not sure. But they released their lineup earlier this week. Last year, their lineup featured Kane Brown, Chase Rice, Old Dominion, and John Party. But in the past, they've had bands like Kid Rock, Willie Nelson, Cole Swindell. So yeah, it's a pretty good festival. It's billed as the biggest country festival in Illinois. It happens every year, like I said. And the headliners for next year's event, at least the announced headliners, obviously with that many days, they're probably going to drop a couple more. But right now, it's going to be Aaron Lewis, Alabama, Brett Eldridge, and Brett Young. And I'm not sure on the date on any of those. I know they announced the date. So if you're interested, you should go check that out. I'll put a link in the description. But this sounds like a festival that just sounds awesome. When I first heard about it last year, it's on the Peoria riverfront. And it takes place during the summer over these couple different weekends. It just sounds like a party. It sounds awesome. And now they're getting bands like Alabama, which makes sense because Alabama is kind of on the festival circuit. At least they've announced for next year. They've been doing a lot of tours over the past couple of years, but they at least what I've seen, they haven't been popping up at a whole lot of festivals. I don't know if this is them doing like a rebrand. I know they did celebrate their 40th or 50th anniversary, I believe. But they got announced for Country Jam in Grand Junction next year. They're going to be playing with Sam Hunt, who's like the polar opposite. But that's cool that they still got picked for that headliner spot because everybody knows that they've got that, sound that everybody's going to love no matter what. So it's cool to see them popping up at this event. Aaron Lewis, Alabama is a good choice to play with Aaron Lewis. I don't know if they're playing the same weekend or not because we know Aaron Lewis isn't a fan of what I call modern country, what he calls bro country. So you probably won't see Aaron Lewis playing festivals with like Sam Hunt. But Alabama plays shows with everybody apparently. Aaron Lewis is going to be there. Brett Eldridge and Brett Young, they both did the festival circuit last year too. And Brett Eldridge is excelling in his career. He's sliding into more headline spots every year. He picks up more and more And he actually did his first headline tour last year, I believe the Long Way Tour. And so it's cool to see that he's not slowing down. I hope that he announces some shows for my area because he's one that I haven't been lucky enough to see yet. The other artists that they got for that bill, these are in alphabetical order. And obviously they're going to be announcing a lot more artists because of how many days they have to fill. And this isn't really much, but it is still cool we got an announcement this early. We're going to see Ashley McBride, Carter Winters, Josh Card. Ashley McBride is the only one of those that I'm familiar with. She's been doing a lot locally over the past couple of years, playing a lot of bars and things like that. She's moving on up, though, getting that name recognition. She's playing all sorts of festivals with all sorts of crazy artists. Best wishes to her. Mason Ramsey, Michael Ray. Michael Ray is kind of interesting that he didn't actually land in the headliner spot, and he might win this whole thing kind of sorts itself out, but I'm surprised he's not listed as a headliner on here because he's one of the names on here that's most recognizable compared to some of these other ones. He's at least got more than a couple songs on the radio, and some of these guys don't have any songs on the radio. Mitchell Tenpenny with his hot off of his fresh debut, Drunk Me. I actually saw him earlier this year at the Taste of Colorado, and that dude's career is probably going to go places. I think he has a very strong debut, and so we'll see where that takes him. Let's see, a couple other bands I don't recognize, and Walker McGuire. And the reason I'm skipping over them is because I don't even know how to pronounce them, and I don't want to butcher their names. But the Steelwoods is one of them, I could say that, and the Sweet Tea Trio. And Walker McGuire. Walker McGuire is another one of these bands that's been doing a lot in the local area, but they haven't gotten that national level of fame yet. So playing a lot of shows like this is a smart move, if you ask me, because they're getting more brand recognition and exposure and probably making some friends in high places too along the way. So Tailgate N Tallboys next year, June 13th to 16th, July 19th through 28th, and September 14th. If you're in Illinois, if you feel like a road trip, this festival is awesome. From what I hear, it's one of the country festivals that's most like going to an actual party. Like, yeah, there's music there, but it's like a nonstop party the whole weekend for people that I know that have gone. So, and this lineup that they've released so far, and there's still more artists to come, this year's going to be no different, or next year, rather. It's going to be a party. Another band, so that was a festival announcement, a band that announced a tour. I'm going to kind of be going back and forth. There was a lot of tours, and then there was a lot of festival announcements. So the next band that announced a tour would be Dream Theater, and they announced their Distance Over Time tour because they have an album coming out called Distance Over Time. And so it's kind of a dual purpose tour, which you don't see too often. Sometimes bands capitalize on stuff, but more typically, I think what you would see in this situation where a band would do a spring tour and a fall tour because they're touring on two different occasions. But they didn't feel like doing that, I guess, so they're doing it both on this Distance Over Time tour. But not only is this a tour in support of the new album, but it's also a tour celebrating the 20th anniversary of one of their other Scenes from a Memory. Sorry, I can't read my handwriting. Scenes from a Memory came out 20 years ago, so they're also touring to celebrate the anniversary of that album. It's a pretty extensive tour, too. It starts in March 20th in San Diego, and it goes all the way until May. It ends in Austin. And they're going to be playing songs. They actually specified in a statement they're going to be playing songs just from those two albums. So everything in between and before, they're not going to be talking about that. They're touring in support of their new album and to celebrate their 20-year-old album. So they'll probably be going back and forth on old shit and new shit, which would be a cool dynamic because you don't see that a whole lot. Usually, even when bands tour in support of a new album, they usually only play a couple songs off that new album, and the rest is the hits and maybe from their most classic album. These guys are just going to be playing from these two albums. And yeah, it looks like people are excited about it online. I'm not too familiar with Dream Theater. I know they're a good rock band. I know they're highly recognized, but I'm personally not too excited about it just because I'm not really a follower of theirs. But like I said, the theaters they're playing, I know when they're coming to my area, when they come to Denver, they're going to be playing at the Paramount, which is a pretty cool theater for them to choose because usually when you hear about a rock band coming through, you'd think it would come to more of like an auditorium style theater as opposed to more of like a civic center setup. But they can fit more people there, and it's more high profile. So it's cool that they're doing this. And like I said, pretty extensive tour. So I'll put a link in the description. You guys could go and find tickets and all the tour dates to see if they're coming to a place near you. Make sure you get the tickets to that, because like I said, even though I'm not personally a fan, I've heard they put on a good show, and they're obviously big enough for me to be talking about them. It's no question that they're big, but what I'm saying is, since I'm not a fan of them and I'm talking about them, that's how you know their impact. So we'll move on. The next thing I'm going to mention isn't even a concert announcement. Most of these stories today are announcements, but this isn't even an announcement. This is something that actually happened a couple weeks ago, but it was just so funny. And I wanted to do the podcast last week, but I didn't get to it. I figured I'd save this story for whenever I got around to doing it, because I didn't think it would ever not be funny. Didn't think it would lose its charm. I'm obviously, you could tell by my wall, and if you watch any of my videos or follow me at all on social media, you know that I love all music, but my main two is going to be country and rock, both modern and older. Doesn't matter. Country and rock sounds, that's more my thing. But I listen to all music nonetheless. But the reason I'm saying that is because I obviously know nothing about rap music. I know nothing about rap beefs or the history of that or anything involved. I'm not going to pretend to know what any of this really means. But something involving a rap beef, also involving a concert, happened that I just thought was funny as fuck. So I figured I'd talk about it because it's something funny that happened about a concert. So I'm going to talk about it on the concert podcast. 50 Cent and Ja Rule apparently have been in this beef, is what they call it in rap. They've been in this beef for a long time. All I know about beefs was Machine Gun Kelly and Eminem were in a rap beef a couple weeks ago, and it was all the internet was talking about. But outside of that, I don't know much about it. But apparently 50 Cent and Ja Rule's beef goes back quite some time, pretty extensively, over like 20 years. And it's kind of died off at points and then picked back up at others. Nonetheless, Ja Rule had a really shitty year last year. I don't know if you guys are familiar. I know this because of the concert thing. He had the whole Fire Festival disaster happen last year. If you're not familiar with that, it was a concert festival that rich kids spent a lot of money on to go spend this weekend on this Paradise Island. And they got there and they weren't prepared for him at all. And the whole thing turned into a clusterfuck. And I'm pretty sure he's getting sued because of that. I'm not entirely sure what happened. Nonetheless, he had to figure out a way to make money because of that. So he's been touring relatively heavily over the past year because of that. And I'm obviously not the target demographic, so I don't know who he is. But apparently they're having a hard time selling these tickets to even people who do know who he is, because they target certain demographics and things like this with their marketing campaigns. His tickets weren't doing that hot, so they did a deal with Groupon where he was selling his tickets through Groupon at like a discount price. And apparently 50 Cent was on Groupon and saw that you could buy Ja Rule tickets for $15 and got on Twitter and started giving him shits, and he couldn't believe how low his prices were. You know, bullying, that wasn't quite enough for him. Instead, he had to take it to the next level and buy apparently the entire front section of the concert in Las Vegas that Ja Rule is going to be playing at. 50 Cent bought $3,000 worth of front row concert tickets with the full intent of leaving them open. He bought 200 tickets for $3,000, all in the front section, just to leave them open. Now, probably it was probably a waste of money. Obviously, I think 50 Cent has $3,000 to spare, though. I don't think he's that worried about it, even though he did file for bankruptcy not too long ago. But it's still funny, and it made some really funny memes online. Honestly, what's probably going to happen is the same thing that happened when they undersold the VIP section at Moonstock. He's probably going to come out and have everybody in the audience move forward. So it won't be that big of a deal for him. It was just like a douchey, funny thing to do that I thought was hilarious. So I wanted to talk about it because I thought it was funny as fuck. And I've never heard of anybody doing shit like that before. And honestly, if there's going to be rap beefs, I would prefer that, because I was reading into this a little bit just because I knew I'd be talking about it. And apparently this escalated so much that at one point 50 Cent actually got stabbed because of this beef that these two dudes are in. So I would rather this than people getting stabbed. I mean, I would rather you spend that $3,000 on a charity or something. But if you're going to just use it to poke fun at somebody, this is a pretty harmless way to do it, I think. And it's just really funny. So, 50 Cent, Troll Ja Rule. Moving on, Kenny Chesney announced a tour. Shocker. He announces a tour every year. The past couple of years, he's been doing these big stadium tours. He's taking it down a notch this year, though. The tour is going to be the Songs for the Saints tour, and it's going to kick off in Illinois and end in Alabama. These are just some of the dates that he's announced so far, and he's going back to playing arenas. He's taking a break from the football stadiums, and he's just doing the arenas now. I think last year's tour was called Another Trip Around the Sun, and he obviously did that with Thomas Rhett and Brandon Lay and Old Dominion. It was a pretty big tour, went to all the football stadiums. Then the previous year or 2 years before that, he'd done the stadium tour, Jason Aldean and Brantley Gilbert and Cole Swindell and Old Dominion also. He's been doing these football stadium things like crazy because obviously he's one of the big name in country music, so he can. But he's scaling back a little bit last year. I have a statement from him. It says, last year, No Shoes Nation, that's what he calls his following, took it to a whole other level and blew all of us away. It was the kind of energy you don't take for granted. So when we started thinking about next year, they made me want to come to them. Rather than the massive 2-day setup, make everybody come to a stadium away from their homes, I wanted to go to where the fans live, strip things back a bit, and make it a little more intimate. I'm fired up for 2019. So that's a statement that Kenny Chesney released about this tour. I'm not sure who his support is, and I don't even know the dates on this. I don't know they've released it. But when he announced it, it was all over the internet, so I figured I'd talk about it. One thing I did find that was funny, though, was I was reading through some of the comments, and there was a lot of people who didn't care. They said they wasted a lot of money going to see him at the stadium show and just felt that he didn't, give them their money worth, I guess. I saw him when he was in Mile High a couple years ago, and I thought he put on a fine show. I enjoyed all the openers more than I did him, but he wasn't bad by any means. He knows he's a superstar, and he plays to that. Unless you're like a diehard Kenny Chesney fan, it's obviously not for you. But what's cool about when he did the big stadium tours was because of who all he brought with him. Because I don't care about seeing Kenny Chesney, but if he's coming to the Broncos Stadium with Brantley Gilbert and Cole Swindell and Jason Aldean and Old Dominion, yeah, I'm going to go to that. So that's a smart way to get people to go to your shows. And that's honestly the only reason why I think he can do the stadium tours is because of who he brings with him. I might be wrong about that. I know he is pretty famous and stuff, but he tours so much. And he's working so much too, anyways. I mean, I think he's one of these guys, he puts out at least an album every year. He tours all the time. So it's not like one of these bands that you have to see when they come by because, they don't come by very often. He comes through our area at least once a year, and he still makes money when he comes through. So I can't knock him too much. But it is cool to see him scaling it back. And like I said, he's saying that that's because he wanted to, but who knows? Maybe it was some of the negative feedback online because there was actually a lot of it. And it might have also been because they figure they can make more money this way. I know that's always the game, so who knows? The next tour announcement is from Muse. They announced their Simulation Theory World Tour. They're another band that tours pretty frequently over the past couple of years. It hasn't always been like that. I remember when I first heard of their music, I was graduating high school, so would have been 2013. And I tried looking for a show, and there wasn't any coming anywhere close for a long time. And so I never did end up checking them out. But then over the past years, they've been touring more extensively. I feel like some bands go through periods where they are more reclusive, and then all of a sudden they just start touring like crazy out of the blue. I feel like that's happening with Muse. It happened with all of Maynard's bands last year or over the past couple of years because like Tool came to Denver like 12 years ago, and then they didn't come to Denver for like 10 years, and then they've been 3 times. Now they've been 3 times in the past couple of years. So I guess they go through spurts of wanting to tour all the time. Nonetheless, Muse is hitting the road for their Simulation Theory tour. I'll pull up my phone so I can get more information on the dates on that. I know last year they toured with 30 Seconds to Mars, And that show came to my area, which is probably why this one isn't. I don't know who the support is going to be on this tour, but it's going to start in Houston in February and run all the way into July. And it's actually an international tour. They're hitting France and Italy and Germany. And only a handful of these dates, probably, I'm not going to count them right now, but probably like 10 or 15 of those dates are North American dates. The rest are overseas. So it's cool to see that they're taking it international, but it's interesting that they're coming back to the United States because they're fresh off of a tour here. So I'm excited about seeing that. If they announce more dates close, which, like I said, they might not because they're going overseas and because they were just here. If their show wasn't successful last year, which I believe it was, then maybe they won't come back here. But usually what's cool about when a band hasn't toured in a bit, and then when they do tour and they play Red Rocks, usually we get them 2 years in a row because Red Rocks isn't that big of a venue. It's an iconic venue. It's on all the big tours, but it only holds about 9,000 people. So usually when a band comes to Red Rocks, they usually come to Denver the next year also, and they end up playing like the Pepsi Center. I'm hoping Nine Inch Nails does that, and I was hoping Muse does that, or did that, but they're not going to. But we'll wait and see. They could change their mind. The next thing I'm going to talk about, I'm going to take a break from some news stories because that's how I wrote down my show notes. So I'm just going in the order of what I wrote it down. 2 weeks ago, a movie opened up wide in theaters, and I know you guys probably are familiar with it, and it's been out for a while, so it's a little late for a review, but I'm going to talk about it anyways because I want to. I went and saw Bohemian Rhapsody. Like I said, it opened wide 2 weeks ago, and it's been making nonstop money since then. It's breaking box office records and things like this, and it was an awesome movie. I'm not going to give it a review because I'm not a movie critic, and I don't like talking shit about movies because I've never made a movie, so I don't want to like get too in depth on critiquing it. But I don't really have to worry about that anyways because I loved it. I didn't really have any problems with it. I know I was reading online, a lot of people were having problems with some of the real life stuff, like how historically accurate it was. And I can't attest to that because I'm not a Queen expert. I know there was a couple things like he had a different haircut and different look during the time he was actually writing We Will Rock You. And I know there's a couple different things that are different. But the reason why I loved it so much and the reason why I felt it was appropriate for me to bring it up on here, because the thing that this movie did best, but it did a lot of things really great, which I'll talk about more in depthly. But I felt like what it did best was the live concert scenes. The concert scenes in this movie, which there is a lot of, are unlike any other. It was way better than the NWA ones. It was better than, some of in that movie, The Doors is better than their scenes. Like the concert scenes from this movie, I just thought were so good. I have never felt so much like I was at a concert while watching a movie than I did with Bohemian Rhapsody. And I know that there was a lot of drama with this movie. It was kind of a production nightmare. There was a bunch of conflicts. Sacha Baron Cohen was originally going to produce, write, and star, and then like last year they ended up switching and they got Rami Malek to come in and play him. And the stars, everybody in the movie was fine. I thought all the performances were awesome to me, and the story itself was fine. But I can't attest to the historical accuracy of it because I don't actually know that much about the history of Queen. But I'm just going to hammer the point on the concert. The movie, this isn't a spoiler alert because it was in the trailers and most people know this, but the movie begins at Live Aid and then it goes further back and then it ends at Live Aid. So the whole movie is working their way up to their Live Aid performance, which is besides Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock, one of the most iconic performances of all time. Like when you think about concerts, like when you talk to people and you say, if you could go to any concert in history, which would it be? People either say they want to go see Ozzy Osbourne bite the head off that bat, they want to go to Woodstock, or they want to go watch Queen at Live Aid. And this movie really captured why they got the magic of these live shows just down. I've never seen it portrayed like that on screen before, and it was just so energetic. There was really no other people in the theater. That's how I know I wasn't feeling the energy from the people around me like you do at a concert. It was literally just coming off the screen because it was shot so well and it sounded so good. And yeah, it was just amazing. There was a lot of stuff I liked about the movie. It was a little long. I felt like it was 2 hours and 15 minutes long. But if you're a fan of movies, if you're a fan of Queen, then it's definitely worth it to check it out. Plus, it's a fun watch. I know movies tend to be darker these days. There's a lot of action and blood and violence and things like this. This is just a fun movie. Obviously, it's a sad story because we all know how it ends. But and the length thing, you can't bitch too much about that because they could probably make a pretty good movie just about a closeted rock star that's 2 hours, whatever long. And this one that's just a small part of the story. They cover the whole thing. So go check out Bohemian Rhapsody if you haven't yet. You won't regret it, especially if you're a fan of live music. That's the one thing I just can't get over. And I found myself, when I was watching the concert scenes in this movie, I found myself doing like the same thing that I always do, like when I'm at a concert. Like I was like during Live Aid, they showed like 3 or 4 of the songs that they played at the Live Aid set. And I just kept thinking in my head, like, oh, what are they going to play next? Like, oh, they better play this one. Like, it's the same mentality that I have when I'm watching a band wrap up a show in real life. I'm like, oh, what are they going to end with? What are they going to play here? And there was like 4 or 5 different scenes in the movie where it showed live performances. And at the end of each one, I just wanted to start clapping and cheering because it felt that much like I was actually at a concert. And so, yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody, awesome movie. Make sure to go check it out. The next story we're going to be talking about is another one that's not an announcement. Red Hot Chili Peppers played an impromptu show on Halloween. So like I said, this is another one of these stories, kind of like the Ja Rule thing. It's a little bit outside my week window, but I thought it was a cool story that I hang on to and talk about when I got around to doing the podcast because it's a fun thing that happened and it's a cool thing that happened. And I begin the show with talking about another fucking shooting. So if I can have some fun and talk about some fun shit that happened, then I'm going to do that. Chad Smith has some kids, obviously, stuff like that. And he played the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Chad Smith, if you don't know, is the drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And the Red Hot Chili Peppers played a show at his kid's school on Halloween. And I think it was an actual concert. There was only one song on Facebook. They played Can't Stop. But it was cool. They were all in costumes. And it's an all ages school. I'm guessing it's like a private school of some kind. But it was the Viewpoint School in California where Chad Smith's kids go. And they play Can't Stop. Flea was dressed up like a skeleton. Anthony was dressed up like a schoolboy, with the shorts and stuff. And they played a concert in the gymnasium at the school. They were having a Halloween assembly, and the kids were surprised with a concert from one of the most high-profile rock bands of the last, 30 years or so. They're pretty famous, and they're also more acceptable. I feel like I don't know too many people that don't like the Red Hot Chili Peppers the way that I know people that don't like Kiss or Aerosmith or Motley Crue or some of these other bands that are on the same level where they can play arenas and tour all big and stuff like that. But they just have fun music, and so. I can't see any parents. I guess what I'm saying is I can't see any parents complaining about their kids getting a free Red Hot Chili Peppers concert. I can see if Motley Crue showed up at a kid's gymnasium and played a show, there might be some upset parents. But obviously, everybody loved this Red Hot Chili Peppers shit. I would love if my kid got a free show from Motley Crue. I'd be jealous, actually. I'd be kind of pissed. Not because they got the show and it's maybe inappropriate for children, but because I wasn't there. Moving on, Russel Dickerson also announced a tour. Russel Dickerson. Russel Dickerson is one of country music's up-and-coming stars of the past couple years. I was actually unfamiliar with who this guy was. I had no clue who Russel Dickerson was until last year. He opened up for Granger Smith at the Grizzly Rose for the St. Jude Jam. And he blew me the fuck away. And so after then, I started looking into his music. And shortly after that, his songs started popping up on the radio. He's had 2 number ones, I believe, because I'm pretty sure Yours was a number one. That was one of his songs. And Blue Tacoma, his most recent one, just went number one a couple weeks ago. So congrats to him. He's following up that success by announcing a tour, like most artists should do. He's going to hit the road with Carly Pearce next year. And the tour is going to be called the Way Back Tour. And let me pull up the information about it real quick. It's just a brief tour. It starts in January and ends in the beginning of March, running from begins in Cleveland, Ohio, bounces all over the board, goes to Wisconsin, Indiana, Louisiana, Oklahoma, Illinois, and then ends in Illinois too. He's going to end in Chicago, and I'm not sure what kind of venues he's playing. I'm assuming they're small theaters. Carly Pearce is another one, though. I'm surprised that this is considered a Russel Dickerson headline tour with support from Carly Pearce, because I think they're at the same level, honestly, and I would rather see a co-headlining performance, or I would rather see her headline this thing. And this takes nothing away from Russel Dickerson. I just went on and on about how he blew me away last year and how he's one of country music's up-and-coming stars. But she's so good. Carly Pearce is amazing. So if anything, this is an awesome move for Russel Dickerson, because he knows that he's going to get people coming out to his shows this way. And this isn't taking anything away from him. I was just kind of shocked. Sometimes you get shocked by this. This is the same kind of feeling I had when I found out that Papa Roach was opening for A Day to Remember last year. I couldn't believe that. I was like, how are they not co-headlining or opening for them? Like, I just thought that it was crazy. It's the same kind of situation, but not too much, because they're not both super famous. They're both still at that up and coming level. Nonetheless, it's going to be a great fucking show. Both them guys kill it. I haven't seen Carly Pearce yet, but I really want to, because I love her music so much. And she's one of these ones that's going to skyrocket, I believe. She's been playing all these big festivals with Big and Rich and Chase Rice and all these crazy shows. This tour is obviously going to be a cool thing for her to add to her resume. So congrats to both of them. The KROQ Almost Acoustic Christmas was also announced this past week. That's this big Christmas time music festival that happens every year at the Forum in LA. This year it's happening on December 8th and 9th. Last year, you guys might have heard about it because Queens of the Stone Age was one of the bands that played, and Josh Homme kicked a photographer in the face. And so a lot of people were talking about that. I knew about it because I run a concert website, but most people only know about it because that happened. So maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe it's not. Nonetheless, their lineup this year is going to be killer. Last year's lineup featured Muse, who we were just talking about, ironically. Morrissey, who I'll mention this because he just came up naturally. Apparently, yesterday, Morrissey got punched in the face on stage, but that was really downplayed by his people and on social media, so I didn't make it an actual story that I'm discussing because there's too many details that aren't very clear about what happened. But there's video of him getting punched in the face, like he got attacked on stage, and I'm not entirely sure what happened, but his people put out a statement saying he wasn't attacked. The assault was taken out of context, whatever. So I guess we'll see. Maybe I'll talk about that next week. Nonetheless, he was at this Almost Acoustic Christmas last year, as well as 30 Seconds to Mars and Rise Against. They had a pretty solid lineup last year. This year's no different. December 8th, the first night, Smashing Pumpkins, 30 Seconds to Mars, Third Eye Blind, Greta Van Fleet, Bad Religion, The Interrupters, AFI, AJR, and Bad Flower. That one night alone is going to be worth the price of admission, man. All these bands on here are killers, and they got some great up and comers too. Greta Van Fleet is probably the hottest rock band out right now. They just sold out a tour of double bookings across the entire country, which is no easy feat. And people call them the Led Zeppelin ripoff, but I could tell they're just Led Zeppelin inspired, and I don't think they're going to stop. I think they're going nonstop. 30 Seconds to Mars, they were there last year. Smashing Pumpkins are fresh off of their reunion tour, so it's cool to see that they're picking up a couple more shows towards the end of the year. They're continuing. Bad Religion, it's cool to see them playing more mainstream stuff, because since Riot Fest stopped coming to Denver, they haven't been doing a whole lot that I've been aware of. I think they come to the area every now and then, but they mostly just play festivals these days, I feel. So it's cool to see them playing a festival that features bands like 30 Seconds to Mars instead of festivals that just feature bands like DRI. Even though it's cool to see them in their element, it's another thing to see them in a mix. There's something to be said for both of those situations. So it's cool to see them pop up on that bill. And Bad Flower, I saw them last year. Before Ghost came out, their hit song, opening up for Pop Evil, and I loved them. I thought they're amazing, so it's cool to see them getting the opportunity to play a show like this. Night 2, Florence and the Machine, who played our Grand Doozy down in Denver earlier this year. They've been playing a lot of festivals lately, and they're obviously cementing themselves as one of the top bands right now for these kind of festival things. They seem to be the go-to. They keep headlining all these cool shows. So good on them. Like I said, the first night, that's going to be worth your price of admission, at least for me. Second night doesn't have much for me. Other bands on the bill are going to be Death Cab for Cutie and Mike Shinoda. That one might be cool. And Young the Giant and Churches. So there's not much on that second night there for me, but that first night would be worth me going to LA just to see that. So KROQ, the world famous KROQ, they're world famous. No, they are world famous. The world famous KROQ Almost Acoustic Christmas. I can't talk. Sorry, I'm talking in circles. Lineup is out. If you're interested, I will put the link in the description. You can get more information on that, on those shows. I guess it's 2 days. The next story is Ace Frehley has been talking a lot about wanting to get back with Kiss. I think it's because he knows Kiss is going on this tour. He's found success on his own, though. So this isn't like out of desperation like a lot of the headlines have been making it seem. Last week or 2 weeks ago, they did the Kiss Cruise. I think this was like this fifth or sixth one. They've done that thing a lot. It's pretty successful. But he reunited for an acoustic performance with Kiss. They played 4 songs, including Rock and Roll All Night, which to me would be enough. Like 4 songs is great, but I think you really only need to play that one to get people excited. He's been talking, and even before then, about he's been saying a lot in interviews, and obviously it's a hot topic right now. So every time he's talked to, he's being asked about this. It's not like he's coming out and begging like they're kind of making it seem, but he's been speaking a lot recently about wanting to reunite with Kiss for their farewell tour. Will he? I don't know. I think so. I don't think he'll actually become a part of the band. I don't think they'll kick Tommy out. I believe that's who filled in for him. But I would love to see Space Ace come back for a couple songs a night, or maybe for like the last leg of the tour. Who knows? But I think since they seem to be on friendly terms, he put out, his album a couple years ago, and Gene Simmons helped him produce it or whatever. They're all friendly at the moment, it seems. So I think it'd be a missed opportunity not to. So I hope he does. Will he? I think so. I'm not sure. The jury's still out on that one, but keep your eyes out. Ace Frehley might be touring with Kiss next year. Touring might be a strong word. He might not be touring with them, but I would say he will appear on that tour at some point for sure. It'd be awesome if they got him as support. That'd be cool. I don't know who's supporting Kiss on their final tour. I should look that up, but that would be a good call. Who knows? But yeah, he performed with Kiss on the cruise, first time in 17 years. And they're friendly. So I think it's a possibility. Another big festival announcement. This one is going to be a country music festival, the Lake Shake Festival. That takes place in Chicago. This year is going to be June 21st through the 23rd. Last year featured Blake Shelton and Dirk Bentley and Florida Georgia Line. And when they announced that lineup last year, I think it was one of the first videos that I made for my YouTube channel. But anyways, they announced their lineup for this year, And so I will pull that up real quick to run down. I know that they got Miranda. While this is loading, I'll tell you, I know they got Miranda Lambert as one of the headliners, and everybody is super excited about that because it's Miranda Lambert featuring the Pistol Annies, who everybody loves, and I think they just had a new album come out and stuff, so everybody's excited about that. Friday, June 21st, the headliner is Miranda Lambert, and then these are all the supporting artists that day: Maren Morris, Lauren Elena, Cassidy Pope, and Lindsay L. That's interesting. So that'll be an all girl day. That's actually pretty cool to see. I would love to go to that because I feel like these female artists aren't represented as much. Usually when I'm talking about these country music headlines, all the females are in the support. There's not usually a lot of girl talent in the headlining spot. So the fact they got a whole day is really cool, especially because this is a stacked lineup. Maren Morris, she never really slowed down after winning Best New Artist. And, she had that hit song last year with Thomas Rhett. So people love her. They're obviously going to go see her. She toured last year with Niall Horan or something like that. Somebody super famous. So it's cool to see her second on this bill. Lauren Elena is amazing. I saw her the other night. I'll talk about that in a second. Lindsay L and Cassidy Pope are both up and coming. Lindsay L is a little bit newer. But still, it's cool to see them both in this spot. Festival. That's going to be a fun day for sure. Saturday, the headliner is Keith Urban, followed by Brett Young, Midland, and Daniel Bradbury. Midland is another one. Midland and Brett Young both. I think they're both in that up and coming category still. Brett Young's obviously more successful. He has like 4 or 5 number ones at this point over the past year since he debuted. Midland hasn't hit number 1 yet, but they have a couple successful singles, and they're selling out all over the place. And they've taken it back to that traditional sound so good that I think people just love them so much because of that. And so if they could follow up their debut album on the rocks with some other stuff, I think they're definitely going to be here to stay. So it's cool to see them playing with Keith Urban. I think it'd be cool to see them play with somebody like Eric Church. That's what I've been pushing for a long time, but Eric Church isn't at this thing, so that's obviously why they don't have him on that day. The next day is Luke Bryan with Granger Smith, Clint Black, Mitchell Tenpenny, and John Langston. Mitchell Tenpenny's obviously getting in on this festival circuit thing because I already talked about him earlier today. But that's what you do when you're at his point. You try to get your name out there. And so he's playing at the bottom of these bills on all these different festivals, but he's playing a lot of them. He's only got that one song right now, and he's going to ride that until he has more songs. So that's a smart thing to do. Clint Black, it's cool to see him popping up more on the festival circuit too. I know Dirks brought him up last year for the Seven Peaks thing, and now he's playing here. The interesting thing to me, though, is on this list, they actually have him listed below Granger Smith, which is interesting to me because I don't think a lot of people would see it that way. But obviously, this is a festival in Chicago, obviously touring or targeting a lot of young country music fans as opposed to people that might be more familiar with the Clint Black. But it is cool to see him getting out there on the festival circuit. But Granger Smith being above him on the bill, that just, I don't know, that seems a little weird to me. Even though I love Granger Smith, he's the famous person that I've met the most times. I've seen him in concert like 4 times. I've met him 3 times. He's a great dude. So it's cool to see him. And Luke Bryan's a no-brainer. Obviously, if they have an open day and he wants to do it, they're going to get him to do it because he plays the football stadiums too, just like Kenny Chesney, and he brings the party everywhere he goes. So the Lake Shake Festival taking place in Chicago, June 21st to the 23rd. The next festival is going to be brief because this is another thing that I'm not going to pretend to know anything about, but it was a big concert announcement, so I'll just tell you what it was. I'll hold back on giving my thoughts on it because I'm not going to pretend like I know what I'm talking about as far as this kind of music goes. Pot of Gold Festival was announced for Phoenix, Arizona, which apparently is an annual festival every year. That's actually one of the biggest hip-hop festivals in the country, or rap festivals, rather. And I'm not even going to say half these names. It's 3 days. They've only announced 2 of the days. I don't want to butcher these names, so I'll just say some of the ones I recognize. Saturday's headliner is Lil Wayne. Sunday's headliner is Post Malone. And other bands featured at this thing are going to be Cardi B, Young Thug, Lil Pump, and Young Dolph. Asian Doll, a bunch of stuff I don't recognize. Like I said, I'll make that one quick because I don't actually know too whole lot about that music. That's not my thing, but this festival is obviously going to be huge, and it's taking place at some crazy park that I've never heard of. It was written on here. One sec. Let me look. Like I said, this festival happens every year. Phoenix Steel Indian School Park. Post Malone is the only, and Lil Wayne, obviously. I'm not like a hardcore fan of their music, but I know that they've both, Post Malone anyways, has had a lot of success, specifically touring over the past couple of years, with a couple of amazing shows, attendance wise in my area. And so good on him. Justin Moore also announced a tour. It's going to be happening from January to March. And I'll pull up the dates on that one too. I need to be more prepared. Sorry, this is my first podcast in 7 months, so I think I'm okay. This tour is going to kick off in January in Tennessee, and it's going to run till the beginning of March, till the beginning of March. It's going to wrap up in Oklahoma. He's hitting the road with Cody Johnson, Eric Pasley, and Riley Green. And up until this show I went to the other night, which is what I'm going to end this podcast talking about. Seeing Justin Moore earlier this year was my favorite concert that I'd attended. He's my favorite country artist. And so, obviously, him announcing a tour is a big deal to me. I'm surprised he didn't announce more album details. I know he has a single out now. Speaking of Veterans Day, Justin Moore's new single, The Ones That Didn't Make It Back Home, amazing song, fantastic song. Make sure to check that one out, especially today. It's fitting for Veterans Day. So I'm not sure if his tour is going to be in support of his new album. I'm thinking that there's something else coming because he didn't announce too many dates, and I don't even think the album has a release date yet. It might, I'm not sure, but I think once more details on the album drop, we'll probably get more dates. But him touring with Cody Johnson's a cool thing. Everybody loves Cody Johnson. He's probably one of the most successful country artists right now that has no songs on the radio. Now that Kane Brown's on the radio, I think that title belongs to Cody Johnson because he sells out every time he comes near. He doesn't play too big of venues, but still respect to him. Eric Pasley and Riley Green, good picks also. Eric Pasley has kind of slowed down as far as putting out new music and things like that over the past couple of years. So it's cool to see him supporting, especially somebody like Justin Moore. Justin Moore's last tour, he was the Hell on the Highway tour. He was supported by Dylan Scott, and I thought those two worked so well together. I think Eric Pasley fits in there pretty well too. So we will wait for that, wait and see if we get any more dates. For now, there's not much of an announcement there. Just Justin Moore's hitting the road again, and I'm excited about that because I love me some Justin Moore. Next thing is a brief announcement. Another thing that I'm not too familiar with, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. But the Avett Brothers, or the Avett Brothers, I don't know how it's properly pronounced. One of the hottest bands, though, right now, for sure. They play 3 shows at Red Rocks every year, and they sell them all out. And they announced when they're going to be at Red Rocks playing their 3 shows this year that are probably going to sell out. And that's going to be Friday, July 5th, Saturday, July 6th, and Sunday, July 7th with Nicole Atkins and Lake Street Drive. And like I said, don't know too much about that. Anything I just said there, but it's a huge concert thing apparently because 3 nights at Red Rocks all sold out. That's a pretty big deal, and they do it every single year. So just because I'm not a fan of them, I still gotta mention it because it's obviously a big thing. They did play Cheyenne. They actually came to my town a couple weeks ago, and they sold out our Civic Center, which this year has seen performances from ZZ Top, Peter Frampton, Easton Corbin, Dave Chappelle was there a couple years ago. None of these shows sell out. Like, those shows never sell out, and they sold out our Civic Center. So that really says, a lot about their band. Even though I'm not familiar with it, that doesn't mean shit. If you're a fan of the Avett Brothers, get excited. Iron Maiden also announced their tour, Legacy of the Beast. They haven't toured the United States in a couple of years. Last time they came through, they were touring with Ghost, and they played arenas all over the country. They did a pretty extensive tour. This is actually going to be a world tour for Legacy of the Beast, and it's kicking off in July next year in Florida and running all the way into October, where they're actually playing in Chile. And so that's pretty cool. And they're going to be supported by the Raven Age. And then with select shows, they're actually going to be supported by Fozzy, which I think is awesome because Chris Jericho is a gangster. I love Chris Jericho, man. Fozzy's one of the best bands coming up right now in rock music. We were just talking about Bad Flower a little while ago. I put Fozzy right up there with them. And they've got Chris Jericho. So, yeah, props to them. Another tour announcement. I'm going to breeze through these next couple stories because we're pushing an hour. We just went over an hour, and I don't know too much about these. The Backstreet Boys announced a tour, which I don't care about, but the internet broke the other day when they announced it. People freaked out about it, so I don't know if maybe they don't tour a whole lot. That would be my guess, but it's called the DNA World Tour. They're coming to Denver. They're playing arenas all over the place. It's a 20th anniversary, I believe. And so, yeah, good on them. I like the Backstreet Boys. They were in This Is the End, that Seth Rogen movie at the end. It was funny as fuck. Whenever I think of the Backstreet Boys, I think of that. So I don't really have much opinions about them touring next year. I'll tell you a little bit about it, though. They're going to start in July, I think. Well, they're doing this big residency in February, April in Las Vegas. And then in May. Okay, so in May, their tour starts, and it's going to run all the way through July. And so, yeah, they haven't announced who's supporting them. I don't really care a whole lot, but if you do, the Backstreet Boys are going on tour. So congratulations to all those Backstreet Boys fans out there. They're going to be able to get their fix. Train and Goo Goo Dolls are teaming up for a tour, which I thought was pretty cool because I feel like they're both at the same level as far as they haven't put out a whole lot of super successful new music lately, but they've still been touring nonstop with no problem. They come through at least once a year, both those bands separately, to my area and play an amphitheater or a civic center or something like that. And they're always successful. Maybe not sold out shows, but they're always successful. And the Train thing is interesting because I think they know that they're getting to this point in their career where they're not going to be the hottest band selling out, shows on Friday night. So they team up with these other bands. Most recently, they played with Hall & Oates at the Pepsi Center. And before that, they've played with Tim McGraw. And so they're kind of branching out a little bit. That's just the two most recent times I think they've been through my area. They just released the Greatest Hits album, or they're getting ready to release a Greatest Hits album. So we knew that they'd be touring in support of that, and I think the Goo Goo Dolls is a solid choice. What was cool about this was how they announced it. They made this goofy video Train did with Kenny G, and it was like a recipe. What do you need to have a good thing for a summer? And the recipe ended up like announcing this tour with the Goo Goo Dolls. So props to them. Congratulations, I guess, on releasing a Greatest Hits album. They're going to make a bunch of money off it. That's the best way to make money without actually writing anything new, I guess. It's just studio releasing your old shit. And the last news topic before I get into my review is Country Fest, which takes place in Wisconsin every year. Announced their lineup last year they featured Jason Aldean and Brad Paisley. Oh, did I break that? Hold on. Okay, brief interruption. Not bad. We made it an hour and 4 minutes without me fucking up. That's not bad for my first podcast in almost 7 months. The Country Fest that takes place in Wisconsin every year. Last year's featured Jason Aldean, Brad Paisley, and Brantley Gilbert as the headliner. They also did this pre-party last year with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band that I thought was pretty cool because the festival's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Thursday night, they did this pre-party thing with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. And they're doing that again this year with Blackhawk, which I thought was a solid choice for their, they call it their kickoff party, I guess. And that's pretty cool because that's obviously not the kind of music that you're going to get at these kind of modern country festivals. But they're fun bands, 90s country bands that people are going to love getting revved up for the weekend ahead on. So this year's lineup, the headliners are Sugarland, Luke Bryan, and Little Big Town. Luke Bryan picking up another one. He was just mentioned as a headliner on another one. Little Big Town, they're playing this festival circuit hardcore next year. They're playing Country Jam, and they just got announced for this one. They're obviously not slowing down at all. And Sugarland reunited last year, and they're not going anywhere. Apparently, they're continuing into this year. I'm hoping I get some local shows from them so that I can go see them because that was one reunion that actually really excited me. They came through my area last year, but it just wasn't at a convenient time for me, so I ended up missing it. The supporting bands on each of these days. The first day, the Sugarland day, sorry. They're going to be featuring Brett Young, Phil Vassar, Diamond Rio, Jimmy Allen, and Jackie Lee, and a bunch of other bands who I'm unfamiliar with. Brett Young, obviously popping off strong. Been talking about him a lot today. I feel like Phil Vassar and Diamond Rio, they're cool picks because of what I was talking about with the kickoff party. They can't exactly headline a show like this, which is why it's cool that they've got the kickoff party to get them revved up. Then I guess they get some of this music sprinkled in throughout the weekend too. Cole Swindell, Lauren Elena, Neil McCoy, Lindsay L, and Travis Denning are going to be on Luke Bryan's day. And Justin Moore, Tracy Lawrence, and Home Free and Riley Green are going to be on the Little Big Town day. So this is kind of a smaller festival. I feel like I was kind of unfamiliar with it. But the thing that's popping out to me the most about it is I like the variety of the traditional older style and the new country. So that looks like a fun time. That's happening next year in Wisconsin. So yeah, sorry, I'm talking fast now because I got to wrap it up because I just realized I've been blabbing for over an hour. I'm going to finish this up with a recap, really quick recap review. I traveled to Kearney, Nebraska over the weekend. I left on Friday. The concert was on Friday. That's if you're unfamiliar with my area, that's about 300 plus miles from where I'm at. And the reason why I drove that far was to see Cole Swindell, which is crazy. Cole Swindell is not my favorite artist or band. My favorite artist is Motley Crue. And the most I ever traveled to see them was about an hour and a half, 2 hours. So there's a story to it. Me and my wife have gone to see Cole Swindell like every year for the past 5 years. And we've watched his career blossom. We originally saw him opening up for the concert I mentioned earlier, the Mile High concert with Kenny Chesney and Jason Aldean and Brantley Gilbert. Cole Swindell opened that show, and You Ain't Worth the Whiskey had just came out a little bit before that, and I think he had one other song. He was on his way at that point, but he was still relatively new. Then the following year, we saw him open for Florida Georgia Line at Frontier Days, which ended up being a record-breaking show. And in between the time we saw him at Mile High and when we saw him at Frontier Days, he had released like 6 more singles, all of which had hit #1. And so we saw him opening up at Frontier Days, record-breaking crowd, and he just put on such a fun show. Shortly after that, he announced a show at the Grizzly Rose for his Down Home Sessions tour, which was what he was doing at the time. His Down Home Sessions is what he does between albums, and so he was kind of touring like that too, because he wasn't quite doing big headlining tours yet. He was just doing supporting tours, supporting acts on tours. But occasionally he would do his own tour on the side. They would play small bars and things like that. We saw him on one of those at the Grizzly Rose, and then the following year we saw him opening up for Dirk Bentley on Dirk's What the Hell tour with him and John Party. And they told us at that tour that that was his last time opening, really. He was going to start headlining after this. We got all excited, and they announced he was coming to Frontier Days as a headliner. We were really excited to get to go see him at Frontier Days, our hometown, his first big headline tour. And we had a kid instead. So that didn't happen. We gave birth to our son. My wife gave birth to my son a week, not even a week, like 3 days before Cole Swindell played in Cheyenne. So obviously we did not make it to that show, but I said I'd make it up to her. And so the next time he was coming through, the closest, doesn't matter where it'd be, his next tour he announced, we would go. When he came to Frontier Days, and earlier this year, he was on a Reason to Drink tour with Chris Jansen and Lauren Elena. When he came to Frontier Days, he was with Chase Rice. Then he announced, after that tour wrapped up, then he announced a Reason to Drink another tour. This one with Dustin Lynch, co-headline with Dustin Lynch, and Lauren Elena staying on as support. And we ended up, I was like, I said I would, so I bought tickets, surprised her a little bit. We got third row center, amazing seats. We drove 300 miles to go to the show, and it was worth it. It was awesome. This is the furthest I've ever traveled to go to a concert that wasn't a festival. And it was 3 like up and coming country artists, nobody super big. And it was worth it. It's crazy that it was worth it. But I'm so happy that it was. I guess I'll just start off at the beginning of it. Lauren Elena opened up the show. Lauren Elena, who I love, I'm a big fan of. I got to meet her last year at the Grizzly Rose. Also saw her perform there. She's one of the most humble and genuine country artists. Not even just young country artists, but just country artists in general. She's so grateful for everything. And she just seems so nice and just pleasant. And she's gorgeous, so that helps too. But nonetheless, she's just a powerful presence. She came out, she opened up the show playing Fat Bottom Girls, which was cool to see her play because she opens up a lot about, she talks about how she's had problems with people body shaming her in the past, and she's had eating disorders and things like this. And so to come out with a song like that, covering a song like that, you're pretty much just embracing it. Plus, she was returning to tour. She had taken 2 weeks off previously because she just lost her stepfather. And so she suffered tragedy. She still came out. She had a good time. And she put on a hell of a show. Next, she covered Paradise City by Guns N' Roses, which was cool to see Twang put on that. Especially having her sing it. It was a really fun thing to see. Awesome to watch her perform that show or perform that song. She played a short set. I think it was only about a half hour. She played both of her songs, and she had both of her hit songs. I guess I should say she has more than 2 songs, but 2 songs on the radio. She played both of them. She has a song called "You Look Like My Next Boyfriend." She did this when I saw her before too, but when she plays this song, she picks a dude out of the crowd and brings him up on stage to dance. And the dude she picked was the worst dude she could possibly pick. He was stiff. He was shy. He was just standing there like he didn't know what to do. Like he was scared. He was blushing. But she was just having so much fun that by the time he was done, he was up there for about 5 minutes. She'd gotten him loosened up, and she was just having so much fun, you could tell. And so then she ended, and it was amazing. And then Dustin Lynch came out. And I'll just say about Dustin Lynch right now, nobody works a crowd like Dustin Lynch. I haven't been to a show in a long time. I can't even think of the last time where somebody had the crowd that hyped up. Every country music, I was talking about this earlier with the Tailgates N Tallboys Festival, but every country show, every country concert, they all claim to be a party. Like every country artist says, "Oh, we're having a party tonight." Like, "Oh, this is a party. You're partying with us." That's the thing. Everybody claims that it's a party. But this was the first one that legitimately felt like it, and it was because Lauren Elena came in super strong, and then Dustin Lynch came in and just made it like solidified that, okay, we're having a good time tonight. He was working the crowd the whole time, calling people out, having them chug beers. saying, let's be loud over here. No, you got to be louder than them over here. Just working the crowd nonstop. Plus, he sounded amazing. His set had these cool light show to go along with it too. He when he was working the crowd at one point, trying to make the left side be brighter than the right side, or be louder than the right side. He had the right side play, or he played "Pour Some Sugar on Me" from Def Leppard, and was trying to make him sing really loud. Then he came to our side and started playing Blink 182, seeing who could play the loudest. And he had us up jumping, just being all crazy. Worked the crowd like none other. Called Lauren Elaine out, played a song with her. Played all of his hits, sounded fantastic doing it. Cole Swindell came out, same thing, started kind of working the crowd right away. It mellowed out a little bit because his energy wasn't nearly as high as Dustin Lynch. That's an unmatchable energy, but it worked so good, him following him. It was the best combination of artists for this show, starting out the way they did and then cruising through the night, because he ended it on such a good note, just like a more solid performance note. But energy wasn't super high. There wasn't anything super over the top, but it was just a solid show. And his set, he had these big screens, and his drums and his keys were up top, and then everything else was down below. And he came out. He had this cool video intro showing, all his accomplishments. And then the screen turned white, and he was standing there. And he came out, and he started playing. And I'd forgot, because this is the first time seeing him headlining. Apparently, he plays his headline shows the same way he did when he was a supporting act. Nothing wrong with that. But he really plays off the album. A lot of artists don't do that. Even if you're touring in support from a new album, usually you'll get the title track, the new single, and maybe one other song. 3 songs out of a usual 10 to 15 song set. But he played a lot of songs off this album. In the past, he'd played a lot of songs off whichever album he was touring on. So I was assuming he would be playing songs off of all the albums, not just the singles, but he didn't. He really just played singles and then a lot of songs off of the album that he was touring on. But it was still awesome, solid performance. Really great to see him. But the way they ended this show was the best part of it, I felt like, because they put a cap on the whole night. And they really ended it a party the same way how it had been a party all the way through. He called Dustin Lynch out for the encore, and he was talking about how much he loves 90s country music. Then him and Dustin Lynch started playing Garth Brooks. Then they ended. They were kind of bullshitting, talking back and forth. And then Lauren Elena appeared at the top, and she said, what about the women of the 90s? She said, I'm here to represent them. And she started playing Shania, I Feel Like a Woman. And it was amazing to see. It was just such a powerful thing that she came down. They finished that song. Then they all 3 teamed up for their cover of The Middle, which is a pop song, but they put a country twist on it. It was bouncing back and forth between all 3 of them, just like that actual song does. And it was an amazing performance. Lauren Elena stood out for me on that, though, just because she just has such a powerful voice and such a powerful presence. It was really cool to see them all play that song, and specifically her. Then they all left, and he ended with You Ain't Worth the Whiskey, which I thought was crazy because he usually plays that in the middle, and he usually ends with Bring the Beat Back, and that's what he opened with. So it was a little different. The other thing I thought was cool was Dustin Lynch actually, first off, they all knew that they were in Kearney. Kearney spelled kind of weird. I've been calling it Kearney all week, and then I was telling people I was going to the show in Kearney, and everybody's like, fuck are you talking about? You mean Kearney? It's Kearney. So like, okay, it's Kearney. They knew that they were in Kearney. Not only that, but Dustin Lynch actually recalled playing at a bar in Kearney when he was first coming up. And he said, I hear that bar's called this now. Like, it was called something else. And he knew that. Like, he looked into it, and he was like, is that where the after party's at? And he got everybody riled up. And that was just him working the crowd again. But them being that personal to that crowd, this is an event center that they don't get a lot of shows. So this is the only show really that's coming through there in a while. And so all the people came to it, probably not even because they're fans of them necessarily, but because it was something to do. But they capitalized on all of it and just made it a fun night for everybody, whether you were like me who drove this far to be there, whether you were just somebody who was bored, so you went to a show because there's nothing else to do in that town, or, you know, whether you're an actual country music fan who just went because you happen to live there. Regardless, they played to everybody. And I was making a joke about the whole Kearney thing, but it's actually important because I saw Eric Church in Casper last year, and he came out and said, it's so great to be in Casper. We've never played here before. You know, it's good to be here. Well, he had played there before. And him not remembering that actually upset like a fuck ton of people. I personally didn't care, but it upset a lot of people. And so the fact that they actually gave that much of a fuck was pretty cool. And I'm going on close to an hour and a half now. Damn, that's crazy. I will wrap it up, but I just want to bring up before I do, I just want to thank the 6 people that came out and saw our panel at the Fort Collins Comic-Con. At the end of August, we went to Fort Collins, Colorado, and we hosted a concert addiction panel at the Fort Collins Comic-Con. We were talking about the influence of rock and roll on comic books and vice versa. We did a panel that was about a half hour long, me and Eli Burgess. I'm still putting the video for that together. I've been very busy. I've just recently graduated school. Like I mentioned earlier, I have a 3-month-old kid. So I'm getting to everything. The video from Comic-Con will be up, but I just want to recap it and say that it was awesome. We talked about every single thing you could think of between comics and music, and we had 6 people show up. We didn't think anybody was going to show up, and then finally 6 people showed up, and it ended up being awesome. We almost ran over our time because we were having so much fun. I was all pissed off at first because I didn't think anybody was going to come, and then people started trickling in. And we played to 6 people, or didn't play. We presented to 6 people. Hopefully we can keep coming back and eventually get a bigger crowd. And we can always talk about our first one when we played to 6 people. But the conversation was so great. I had such a good time doing it. And I hope to do more stuff like that. Like I said at the beginning of this, I will be more on top of all the concert addiction properties. The website will be updated more. The Facebook page will be updated more, and the YouTube channel will be updated more. This podcast will be chopped down into a bunch of different segments, piece by piece on each topic. I'll put those up also on the Facebook page and on the YouTube individual stories, so you don't have to watch me talk for a whole hour and a half just to hear about one specific topic. Thank you all for watching or listening, depending on how you're listening to it. I will be doing this every Sunday. That's my plan. We'll do a weekly podcast every Sunday. But until then, until next Sunday, make sure to check out my Facebook page, facebook.com/concert addiction. Subscribe to this YouTube channel.com/concert addiction, and check out my website, concertaddiction.com, and never miss anything going on in the world of live music. By the new year, we will be up to speed fully, going full time with this thing. We'll be doing videos every single day. There'll be content like crazy. So if you like what you see here, like it, leave a comment. We appreciate all that. And there will be a lot more content soon. So until next Sunday, thanks for watching. Bye.